your old pal said, son, you've got a friend in me. Yeah, you've got a friend in me.
The bell of Notre Dame and the cardinal. No, not that one. That's the one. They call us together in covenant to bring us to deeper awareness of the beauty and infinite value of every being. Today, let us especially remember our covenant to affirm and promote our first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person and every being. Good morning. Welcome to Virtual Worship with Community Unitarian Universalist Congregation in White Plains, New York. I'm the Reverend Meredith Garmon. I'm minister here, coming to you from our sanctuary, where there have probably been primates for 66 million years and humans have roamed for about 9,000 years.
Good morning. I'm Tracy Brenneman, Community UU religious educator in my home in Westchester County, which was, all of us are on land that was formerly of the Lenape Nation. Our music director, Adam Kent, is away today, but with us in spirit and in video.
Welcome to this home of liberal religion, which affirms four truths.
It's a blessing you were born.
It matters what you do.
Your experience of the divine is true.
And you don't have to go it alone.
Again, thank you for joining us this morning. It's so good to be together. Our shared light is a beacon of hope.
It's the Sunday at the end of the first full week of spring. At the White Plains latitude, the sun will be in the sky today 2 minutes, 44 seconds longer than yesterday. The moon is full tonight. It's called the worm moon because of the earthworms that emerge this time of year in the northern hemisphere, feeding the robins that we notice have grown more plentiful.
On the Jewish calendar, Passover began at sundown last night. The 8-day festival commemorates the liberation of Israelites from Egyptian slavery.
Chag Pesach Sameach. On the Christian calendar, today is Palm Sunday, commemorating Jesus's triumphal entry into Jerusalem. It's the beginning of the last week of Lent and the week leading up to Easter.
A special welcome to our visitors. If you're a visitor, we invite you especially to introduce yourself in the chat. You'll find a link to the order of service on our website at cuucwp.org. There you'll also find resources to help keep us connected during this time and a donate button. For March, our Share the Plate funds go to the Murray Grove Retreat Center. We're able to take contributions via the donate button for your pledge, the plate share, and the minister's discretionary fund.
Now, Board Chair Joe Majak has some news and will then lead us in lighting our chalices.
Hi, I'm Joe Majak. As the chair of the board for this congregation, I welcome you. I'd like to take a minute to remind everyone that this coming Saturday, April 3rd, CUUC will host a spring fling for all ages. It is an outdoor event that starts at 10:30 a.m. and is scheduled to end at 2:30 p.m. Join us for fun and community as we welcome spring. Come at 10:30 a.m. for ground tours and cleanup and an Earth Song Circle. From 12:30 to 2:30 p.m., we will have a geocache type Easter hunt, an Easter tree table, games, crafts, and an introduction to the iNaturalist app, plus a special appearance by the Rainbow Unicorn. Bring your mask, a lawn chair, and your own bag lunch. We are planning fun and fellowship while observing pandemic safety protocols. And now it's time to light the chalice. On the Sunday after the first full week of spring, we dedicate our chalice to the first principle of our faith, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, every being. Please join with me in the chalice lighting words from Albert Schweitzer. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think, with deep gratitude, of those who have lighted the flame within us.
The minor Reformed Church, that is, the early Unitarian Church, began in Poland because Poland in the 16th century was tolerant enough to allow it. But in the 17th century, Poland proved not tolerant enough to allow it to continue. In the half century after Fausto Sozzini's death in 1604, oppression increased and worsened until in 1660 the Socinians were forcibly expelled. Some went to Transylvania, where Polish-speaking Unitarian churches were then established, and these eventually assimilated. Some exiles went to Königsberg, Prussia, where for another century Socinian congregations survived. The Socinians who made it to Holland established the congregations that endured the longest. Fausto and Elizabeth Morstan had one child, a daughter Agnes. Agnes grew up and married Stanislaw Vizovati, and they had a son, Andreas Vizovati, born 1608. Andreas, Fausto's grandson, was a theologian in his own right and minister in the Socinian churches of Holland, as were both of Andreas's two sons. After the generation of Fausto's great-grandchildren, for all practical purposes, Socinianism as an organized religious movement died. The ideas, however, the thought printed in Fausto's books, which had been leaking into England since 1590, continued to filter in over the next 2 centuries and fuel a Unitarian movement there. Through those writings, Fausto Sozzini was, as David Park writes, more than any other person, the architect of modern Unitarianism. We are his heirs, not because we share his doctrines, most of us do not. We are his heirs because we Unitarian Universalists today continue the conversation to which Fausto Sozzini so substantially contributed. We have expanded upon his commitments to tolerance of diverse viewpoints, and we retain his emphasis on religion as what we live, one example and model of which is the life of Jesus. May we be worthy of this rich inheritance.
The music I chose for this morning's service on the theme of trust brings to mind an expression coined by the musicologist Edward T. Cohn, who wrote about promissory notes in certain compositions. Pieces with promissory notes often include some odd detail early on. The composer, though, seems to be saying, "Trust me. It's there for a reason. Stick with me, hear me out, and you'll see why." And in the work of great composers like Chopin, Schubert, or Mendelssohn, the promises are kept. Everything seems to be justified in the end. Take the Chopin Nocturne in B major, for example. Some of the strangely unsettling phrase endings and interruptions find their ultimate destination at the piece's conclusion. This is one of the few pieces I can think of that starts in a major key but ends up in a minor key.
For opening words, I offer this Blessing for the Brokenhearted by Jan Richardson. Let us agree for now that we will not say the breaking makes us stronger, or that it is better to have this pain than to have done without this love. Let us promise we will not tell ourselves time will heal the wound, when every day our waking opens it anew. Perhaps for now it can be enough to simply marvel at the mystery of how a heart so broken can go on beating, as if it were made for precisely this, as if it knows the only cure for love is more of it, as if it sees the heart's sole remedy for breaking is to love still, as if it trusts that its own persistent pulse is the rhythm of a blessing we cannot begin to fathom, but will save us nonetheless. Now, the spoken invocation, and then sing along with the sung invocation. Words of invocation from Reverend Tim Haley. Amid all the noise in our lives, we take this moment to sit in silence, to give thanks for another day, to give thanks for all those in our lives who have brought us warmth and love, to give thanks for the gift of life. We know that we are on our pilgrimage here but a brief moment in time. Let us open ourselves here, now, to the process of becoming more whole, of living more fully, of giving and forgiving more freely, of understanding more completely the meaning of our lives here on this earth. Now let us affirm together the aspiration from Spirit of Truth. I invite you to sing along with our own Kim and Georgiana.
Spirit of truth, that dwellest in the mountain, descend, we pray thee, to the marts of earth. Give us to hear the rustle of thy garment. Grant us to feel thy shadow near. So may we find
The mission of Community Unitarian Universalist Congregation is the covenant of this congregation. Would all the members and visitors who would like to affirm it along with me? We covenant to nurture each other in our spiritual journeys, foster compassion and understanding within and beyond our community, and engage in service to transform ourselves and our world.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies grow, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Our story this morning is Moonchild, written by G. Brian Benson and illustrated by Paul Hernandez. It's an inspirational story of empowerment and visualization about the power of believing in yourself and trusting in your dreams. There once was a child who looked up to the sky and focused their stare on the moon. They would ponder and think of the many ways they could live their life in full bloom. Their wishes and dreams known only to them were exciting and real in their head. Pictures of travel would swirl all around till they fell softly asleep in their bed. The moon to them was a giant friend to dream upon, which set them free. Free to think and grow and learn, to just be themselves was the key. Their moon was inspiring, a bright shining star which sent their spirits to flight. When feeling low, they would look high to the sky and soon would be feeling all right. Being friends with the moon helped plant a seed deep down inside their soul. This gave them the courage to be whom they wish, to flourish and play any role. Listening to their heart was the key to make their world truly alive. Stepping forward in faith and trusting their heart, each day they were daring to strive. So believe in yourself and always keep on with the help of your friends like the moon. The power's there, just open your mind. It will all come together quite soon.
So join me now in a time of prayer. Dear creation, there are people acutely hurting, sometimes ourselves. There are relationships to be nurtured involving ourselves. There is the work we are called to do. We seek the courage to make a difference and care for ourselves and one another. We seek healing for ourselves, our loved ones, our communities, our planet. There is hatred in the lands, in the US against Asian American and Pacific Islanders, in China against Uyghur Muslims. Our hearts go out to those in Myanmar, where hundreds of Burmese citizens, including police officers, government officials, and civilians, are fleeing as violence over last month's military coup worsens. Our hearts go out to our siblings in Brazil, where hospitals are near collapse and there are reports of spiking COVID-19 case numbers. Our hearts go out to our siblings in India, where they also are seeing a significant increase in infections as they mark the biggest case rise since November. And our hearts go out to our siblings in Somalia as COVID-19 surges and deaths are reported there. Our hearts go out to our siblings in Australia as the Australian government has declared a natural disaster as heavy rains batter the state, forcing thousands to evacuate. We long to be physically together again as we struggle with violence in our world, as we struggle with devastating racism and bigotry, as we each make a difference in our communities and world. May we breathe in all the trouble in the world and breathe out peace and love. And so, for all that has been spoken and shared with us, and for all that is held silently in our hearts this morning, we observe a moment of silence.
Calling all you hungry hearts, everywhere through endless time. You who wander, you who thirst, I offer you this heart of mine. Calling all you hungry spirits, all the lost and the left behind. All I can, I'll share with you, your joy and your sorrow, I make it mine.
Chopin's Prelude in E minor begins with a seemingly unpromising idea of just two notes, B and C, rocking back and forth. But what a masterpiece he spins out of it, how those two notes in the end are justified.
In our series of slogans that help, suppose you adopted as your motto, pause. We don't always need to pause. Sometimes we need to start or resume, or even in the limited ways this is possible in life, rewind or fast forward. But if you're like me, it's the pause button I'm particularly likely to neglect when it would have been helpful. So, repeating to myself a one-word slogan that reminds me to pause is good practice. Whether you're faced with criticism at work, a partner whose feelings are hurt, an internal urge to lash out verbally, or an opportunity for some gratification that will cost you later, you've got to be able to push the pause button. Your pause gives other people time to have their say without feeling interrupted. It gives you time to discern what's really going on, time to calm down, get centered, sort out your priorities, and let wholeheartedness soften a hard-edged position. Pause. Make it okay with yourself to simply be from time to time. Pause. A few times a day, stop for a few seconds and tune in to what's going on for you. Pause. Before beginning a routine activity, take a moment to become fully present. Pause. After someone finishes speaking to you, take a little longer than usual before you reply. For more on how to help yourself take the pauses that refresh, see the post at cucmatters.org. The link is in your e-communitarian. I invite you now to sing along, please, with the Force Family. Our hymn number 220, Bring Out the Festal Bread.
Bring out the festal bread and sing songs of freedom. Shout with the slaves who fled and sing songs of freedom. What modern pharaohs live in arrogance crowned, who shall be sent to challenge folly unbounded. Bring out the festal bread and sing songs of freedom. Shout with the slaves who fled and sing songs of freedom. Chains still there are to break, their days are not finished. Metal or subtle made, they're still not diminished. Bring out the festal bread and sing songs of freedom. Shout with the slaves who fled and sing songs of freedom. Still does resentment bind each brother and sister. Still do the plagues affect us red as the river. Bring out the festal bread and sing songs of freedom. Shout with the slaves who fled and sing songs of freedom. Long be our journeying, yet justice is worth it. Dance, Sister Miriam, and help us to birth it. Bring out the festal bread and sing songs of freedom. Shout with the slaves who fled and sing songs of freedom. Oh, people, lift your heads and look to the mountains. Bushes of flame still call us, rocks still gush fountains. Bring out the festal bread and sing songs of freedom. Shout with the slaves who fled and sing songs of freedom.
Do you trust me? Says Aladdin as he holds out his hand to Jasmine. What would you do? It happens twice in the 1992 Disney cartoon movie. The first time, he's a street urchin and she's in disguise as a commoner. The second time, he's in disguise as a prince and she's in her element as princess in the palace. Neither time does she have any reason to trust him. But she says yes and takes his hand. Both times. It's a risk. She might get let down, maybe hurt or killed if she falls off that magic carpet when it takes a swerve. She takes the risk. Why? We don't know. I don't think she knows. Trust. Cicely Bach says, whatever matters to human beings, trust is the atmosphere in which it thrives. Jasmine's world has been trustworthy enough that she feels she can trust a stranger, take that leap. And because she can, well, a whole new world opens up for her and for Aladdin. I want to note that Jasmine's trust is not a virtue she has. If we said that, then we'd have to say that if she'd said no, she'd be lacking some virtue. But no, if she'd said, no, I don't trust you, I am not taking your hand, there would be no basis for finding any fault. Jasmine's trust is not a virtue of Jasmine, but it is a virtue of the conditions in which she grew up. That those conditions have taught her that trusting strangers is a risk she can sometimes take. The conditions of her upbringing taught her that she can trust herself. The saying goes that a bird on a tree is never afraid of the branch breaking because her trust is not in the branch, but in her wings. Because of that combination of trust in herself and just high enough willingness to trust strangers, she answers yes. She takes his hand and takes the leap. Trust is a virtue of social systems, not of individuals, as opposed to trustworthiness, which is a virtue of individuals. It's your responsibility to be trustworthy, but it's not your responsibility to trust. Trust may come to you as a grace, but you can't force it. If you don't trust some situation, then trust your mistrust and back away. Trust is a collective rather than an individual virtue. Trust is built, if it is built, collectively. In a restaurant, I trust you to serve untainted fish, and you trust me not to skip out on the bill. Social trust is a generalized faith in the people of your community, that most people will do what they ought to do most of the time. Not everybody, maybe not anybody all the time, but most people most of the time. And some level of shared norms, a general agreement on what counts as what one ought to do is necessary. If two lanes of traffic are merging into one, the drivers in each lane are supposed to take turns. If one butts in line, then others honk indignantly. They want to enforce the small fairness rules that make our society function smoothly. Francis Fukuyama's 1995 book, Trust, coined the phrase spontaneous sociability. He said that where social trust is high, spontaneous sociability increases, and we can spend less time and energy checking each other out and looking for signs of untrustworthiness. We can spend less time and energy guarding and protecting ourselves from being swindled, and can much more efficiently move into cooperating, helping each other out. Spontaneous sociability means that people are able to organize more quickly, initiate action, and sacrifice for the common good. Increased trustworthiness, the individual virtue, helps. When more people have the virtue of being worthy of trust, that does facilitate trusting, but that's not enough. Social trust has been falling precipitously in this country, and it's not clear that the institutions that are less trusted are any less trustworthy than ever. Scammers prey on the elderly. Why is that? We tend to suppose, well, they don't think as clearly and can't follow how they're being scammed, and that it may be a factor sometimes. Another factor, though, is that they come from a generation that was much more trusting, a generation that, because of the amazing things they accomplished together through that trust, is called the greatest generation. In 1964, 77% of Americans said they trusted the federal government to do the right thing most or all of the time. And then came Vietnam and Watergate, which certainly undermined trust in government, and Reaganomics, not just economic policies that said government isn't here for you unless you're rich, but a stream of rhetoric that said government is the problem. Remember, he had that line, the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. That one line may have done more harm than his policies. He turned people who trusted that their government actually could do a lot of very helpful things, which is to say people who trusted their neighbors to be able to work together collectively through elected officials for the common good, which is what trust in government is. He turned those people into the butt of a joke. So by 1994, only 1 in 5 Americans said they trusted government to do the right thing. From 77% to 20% in 30 years. Even so, when phrased as a question of trust in the political competence of their fellow citizens, most people still affirmed that. In 1997, 64% of Americans had a great or good deal of trust in the political competence of their fellow citizens. Then came the Iraq War and the financial crisis, the election of Donald Trump, and today only 1/3 of Americans say they trust in the political competence of their fellow citizens. And the distrust turned explosive. Explosive distrust is not just an absence of trust or a sense of detached alienation, it's an aggressive animosity and an urge to destroy. Explosive distrust is the belief that those who disagree with you are not just wrong, but illegitimate. It's not that way everywhere. In Denmark and the Netherlands, trust has been growing. In Denmark, about 75% say that people around them are trustworthy. In Netherlands, 2/3 say so. In the US, on the other hand, in 2014, only 30% of Americans agreed that most people can be trusted. That's the lowest number since the survey started asking the question in 1972. It becomes a vicious downward spiral. When we don't trust each other, we don't form or sustain networks that we can trust, and then trust falls further. When people believe they can't trust others, that others aren't trustworthy, they become less trustworthy themselves. And so our younger people growing up under conditions of mistrust have more mistrust. 40% of baby boomers say most people can be trusted. Only 31% of Generation X, born before 1980, say most people can be trusted. For millennials born since 1981, the proportion who say most people can be trusted drops to 19%. We need to acknowledge that sometimes, in some ways, American social trust has been intermixed with delusion. Only 35% of young people versus 67% of old people believe that Americans respect the rights of people who are not like them. Fewer than 1/3 of millennials say America is the greatest country in the world, compared to 64% of members of the silent generation. Believing the US to be the greatest country in the world has always required a highly selective measure of greatness. And on many measures, we've been falling further behind. And the disconnect between how highly Americans thought of themselves for respecting the rights of people not like them and how much they actually did respect those rights is only recently beginning to narrow. So, good for the younger generations for increasingly disavowing those delusions of grandeur. I get how the delusions fostered social trust, but delusions inevitably collapse. Sustainable, non-delusive social trust is possible, and maybe we will get there. In the meantime, it's helpful to name the condition that we are currently in. Name the water that, like a fish, we might not notice because we're immersed in it. what we're in the middle of right now doesn't have to stay that way. Our country has been a place of trustingness, and it might be again. Adam?
This is the second of a set of 6 pieces Schubert entitled Moments musicaux, or musical moments. And some of the strange little harmonic twists you hear in the first section wind up having all kinds of extraordinary consequences as the piece unfolds.
It's not up to you to try to make yourself a more trusting person. That might not be a good idea. Williams syndrome is a rare neurodevelopmental genetic condition that features mild learning or developmental challenges and also a markedly outgoing personality. People with Williams syndrome have a high level of sociability, very good communication skills, and are very trusting of strangers. And that's not always a good thing. If you get an email from a prince of Nigeria asking for your help to transfer some funds, or an email purporting to be from me asking for personal help, don't trust it. Making ourselves more trusting in a world that is often untrustworthy is not the issue. What we can do is be on the lookout for opportunities to relate to others in ways that grow trust, understanding that that's got to be a slow process. And to do that, we have to know how that happens. How does trust develop between two people and among members of a group? I turn here again to Brené Brown, who wonderfully combines a scientist's respect and quest for data with a heart-centered gift for understanding it. She says trust is built in very small amounts. When people talked about trust in the research, they said things like, yeah, I really trust my boss. She even asked how my mom's chemotherapy was going. Or, I trust my neighbor because if something's going on with my kid, it doesn't matter what she's doing, she'll come over and help me figure it out. One of the top things we found as a small thing that engenders trust, attending funerals. Someone shows up at your sister's funeral, and it really adds to your sense of trust in them. Another big factor, asking for help when you need it. Trust emerges between and among people through the accumulation of little things that we do for each other. Looking over the data, Brené Brown discerns 7 factors that develop trust. Don't try to make yourself trust, but do be on the lookout for these factors. Be attentive to the emergence of where a higher level of trust might be warranted. She arranged the 7 into an acronym that spells BRAVING, B-R-A-V-I-N-G. When we trust, we are braving connection with someone. B, boundaries. Healthy boundaries define who we are in relation to others. They also help us know what the extents and limits are with others. Personal boundaries are how we teach people who we are and how we would like to be handled in relationships. Boundaries help you say, this is who I am. So be explicitly proactive about what you're not comfortable with and what your needs and commitments are. If you're not clear about who you are, I can't trust you. I trust you if you're clear about your boundaries and you hold them, and you're clear about my boundaries and you respect them. There is no trust without boundaries. R, reliability. I can only trust you if you do what you say you're going to do over and over and over again. Reliability doesn't come from keeping your word once. In our working lives, reliability means that we have to be very clear on our limitations so we don't take on so much that we come up short and don't deliver on our commitments. In our personal life, it means the same thing. The key part to keeping commitments is not committing more than we can keep. A, accountability. I can only trust you if, when you make a mistake, you're willing to own it, apologize for it, make amends. I can only trust you if, when I make a mistake, I'm allowed to own it, apologize, and make amends. Next is keeping confidences, but since she needs a word that starts with V, she calls it the vault. V, the vault. What I share with you, you hold in confidence. What you share with me, I'll hold in confidence. It goes in the vault and it's sealed from public view. And it's not just whether you hold my confidences, If you gossip with me about someone else and share with me a story that isn't yours to tell, then my trust in you is diminished. The vault means you respect my story. And a key way that I come to believe you will respect my story is that I see you respecting other people's stories. Integrity. I can't trust you and be in a trusting relationship with you if you don't act from a place of integrity and encourage me to do the same. Integrity has three pieces: choosing courage over comfort, choosing what's right over what's fun, fast, or easy, and practicing your values, not just professing your values. N, non-judgment. I can fall apart, ask for help, and be in struggle without being judged by you. And you can fall apart and be in struggle and ask for help without being judged by me. Under some conditions, helping people can actually lower trust. That can happen if we feel that the help is coming from someone who's judging us for not being able to work it out ourselves, or is judging us for needing their help. If you're the helper, you can offer reassurances. Oh, this happens to me all the time. There's no way you could have known how to do that. Or, wow, it's great to see how far you got on this on your own. I'm impressed. But there's still, even with that, there's a little edge of suspicion that your assessment of the person's competence might have slid just a hair. The only way to really remove that hint of judgment from helping someone is for you to take turns asking for their help. Only then are the vestiges wiped away of the thought that competence is a ground where we're competing with each other to see who has more of it, which is not a ground of trust. When I think less of myself for needing help, whether I'm conscious of it or not, when I offer help to someone, I think less of them too. You cannot judge yourself for needing help, but not judge others for needing your help. Real trust doesn't exist unless help is reciprocal and thereby free of judgment. G, generosity. Here we're talking about interpretive charity. Trust requires that we evince a generosity of spirit in how we understand and interpret each other. Our relationship is only a trusting relationship if you can assume the most generous thing about my words, intentions, and behaviors, and then check in with me. Assume best intentions is a wonderful slogan. I have noticed, though, that its usefulness is limited if our imaginative capacity is limited. If the only two interpretations you can possibly imagine are they are evil and they are stupid, you may have a hard time deciding which one is the more generous explanation. And when you're hurt and feel betrayed, your imaginative capacity shrinks. At those times, all you can do is just say, you don't know why they did that. You just don't know. And as you heal a bit and get a little distance from the wound, your creative, empathetic imagination can start to do a better job of imagining a generous interpretation. This braving acronym works with self-trust too. If braving relationships with other people is braving connection, self-trust is braving self-love. We can't ask people to give us something that we do not believe we're worthy of receiving. An African proverb says, beware the naked man offering you his shirt. And you know you're worthy of receiving trust when you trust yourself above everyone else. These are Brené Brown's tools for interpersonal trust. To do our part in rebuilding social trust, we take those tools and join organizations using those tools of trust building in the development of clubs, associations, and congregations. That you are a member of a congregation in these times when increasing numbers of people aren't. already puts you at the forefront of builders and nurturers of social trust. As David Brooks writes, whether we emerge from this transition stronger depends on our ability from the bottom up and the top down to build organizations targeted at our many problems. If history is any guide, this will be the work not of months, but of 1 or 2 decades. Do you trust me? May it be so. Amen.
Please sing along with a recording of our congregation a few years ago, singing hymn number 151, I Wish I Knew How. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We share our gratitude for Kim Force, who produced our media, Rachel Diamond and Tony Arian, your tech team this morning, Pam Parker, who keeps us all organized, and Jane Dixon, who greeted you in the chat stream. Be safe, be well. And now please join Joe Majak for our chalice extinguishing words as you extinguish your chalice at home.
Please say with me these words as we extinguish our chalices. We extinguish our chalice and the spark of divinity that recognizes the worth and dignity of all beings we carry with us now into the world.
Take courage, friends. The way is often hard.
The path may be unclear.
And the stakes are very high.
Take courage, for deep down there is this other truth.
You are not alone.
Go in peace.
If you've got troubles, then I've got them too. There isn't anything I see it's our destiny. You've got a friend in me. You've got a friend in me.
What a wealth of beautiful harmony opens up for listeners willing to trust Felix Mendelssohn beyond the sparsely scored opening of this song without words, popularly known as Pilgrim's Song.